Hello, everyone. So it is 6:23. I decided to hop on here a little bit early just to make sure everything's working. So those of you that have tuned in, just hang tight. We have 6 minutes to go, and then we are going to start the lecture series. And then whatever platform that you're on. You can ask some questions if you choose to do so. Um, I'll be able to see in the chat any questions that you might have. I believe I sent all the slides to everybody that signed up. If you haven't received the slides, let me know, and I'll make sure I get you the slides as soon as possible. And then that way you have all the information. This lecture series is about sharing and making sure you have everything that you need to learn about Black history and to share the history with others. I don't believe in keeping this knowledge. So this is another reason why we have this lecture series to ensure that all of this information is shared far and wide. So yeah, let me know if you need the slides for this week. Next week, uh, we'll also have some slides as well. So I will send that out to everybody that signed up so that you have all the information. Okay. So hang tight. We got 4 more minutes and we will begin. So for folks that are tuning in, I see people are tuning in. Welcome. Just giving people some time to get settled. We're going to start right at 6:30. So yeah, just hang tight and yeah, just relax, take it easy, and we'll start in 3 minutes. I see we have some other folks joining in. Welcome. Whichever platform you're on. Um, um, Please use the chat. If you're on YouTube, you can definitely use the chat. I can see the comments. Someone is asking, anyone to whom we forward the email can get, yes, they can get access to the slides. They don't need to sign up. So again, this is the beauty of this public lecture series. I believe in doing things publicly for the public good of people. So yes, you can share that link that you received with as many people as possible, and people can use the slides whichever way they want. They can use it in school. They can share it with their family. Use it for whatever reason you want to use it for. And again, this is like focused on Hamilton, obviously with some global connections and whatnot. But um, I thought it was important to have a specific Black history related to Hamilton. So you can definitely share that email and that link with anyone. I see some people are saying hello. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So it is 6:30. So I am going to begin. Well, first off, thank you to everyone that's tuning in. I really appreciate you. Thank you for the interest. Thank you for signing up. Again, I sent the slides. If you don't have the slides, just let me know and I'll get it to you. And you can use it in whichever way you can, formal, informal ways. This is public information, and please share it far and wide. So, welcome to the public lecture series, Unnoticed Histories of Black Communities in Hamilton. To everyone, happy Black History Month here in Hamilton on January 30th, courtesy of the Hamilton Black History Council. We officially launched Black History Month here in Hamilton, and we saw some great and important stuff. And I just want to share that with you so that you also know what's going on in the city of Hamilton. So first off, congratulations to Stilo Star. If you don't know, Stilo Star was commissioned by the Hamilton Street Railway (HSR) to do an art piece, and the art piece features another Hamiltonian, Quincy. You might see the bus from time to time across the city, so that has been commissioned. So that's a great thing that's happening. The second thing is that under the leadership of Terry Bedminster, we now have a community advisory Black Health table that's going to be looking at long-standing issues related to health right here in Hamilton. So that was launched January 30th, 2026, and we're excited about all the other events that are happening across the city as it relates to Black History Month. So, welcome again. I see more people are tuning in. So, welcome to the Unnoticed Histories of Black Communities here in Hamilton. And so, we're going to start. So, first off, people of African descent obviously trace histories and hair stories to African societies. When people think of African societies, they're probably thinking of Egypt, the pyramids, maybe they might be thinking of other places. Um, and I would say that when I think of African societies or African histories, there's a pluriversality, meaning that there are many extensions and cultures and social realities and economic realities on the continent. But for far too long, that uh, 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 multiplicity of societies have been reduced to certain stereotypes, and most often not been even erased. So I have here an example for you right in the slides. This is the philosophy of history written by Hegel, and he states the the peculiar African character is difficult to comprehend for the very reason that in reference to it, we must quite give up the principle which naturally accompanies all our ideas, the category of universality. At this point, we leave Africa not to mention it again, for it has no historical part of the world. It has no movement or development to exhibit. Historical movements in it, that is that is in its northern part, belong to the Asiatic or European world. And he wrote this in 1834. Excuse me, 1837. What does that tell you? This is someone writing about African societies, and this is how we see the stereotypes of people of African descent. First, by saying that the African character is peculiar and difficult to comprehend, you know? So, these are the beginnings of how people begin to characterize people of African descent. One, by saying that they are hard to comprehend. Two, by saying that they are not part of world history, right? How can a continent full of individuals, human beings, be relegated by a book, by a philosopher to say that for it has no historical part of the world? And not only that, he then goes on to say the northern part of Africa should be part of the European world. So these are some of the gymnastics that people have done historically about people of African descent. I have this picture here to kind of show you how the movement of people of African descent kind of flow through the world globally. You had imperial powers, Portugal, Spain, Britain, come to the western coast and eastern coast and other coasts of the continent to capture people, to kidnap people, transport them to Europe, transport them to the Caribbean, transport them to what we now know as North America. And I've kind of used this picture here to also pinpoint Haiti, which I will talk about it in a minute, as being a very central piece to the history of African peoples and the history of Black people. So, moving on from Hegel, who's saying that we have no we have no history, I would push back against his book and push back against his comment to say that Africa has a long standing in his history. We have a long standing history that goes way, 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 way back. And so I've kind of given you some of this history and some of the books that speak to this history. So we can speak about the Ghana Empire from 16th century to 13th century, the Mali Empire from uh, 1226 to 1670, the Kingdom of Congo from 1390 to 1857, the Songhai Empire from 1493 to 1591, the Oye Empire, the Benin Empire, Dahomey, Ashanti, Ethiopian, And I must say that for many of the African countries that we now know today stem from these historical African societies. So when we even think of where I trace my history from Ghana, the Ashanti Empire is still relevant today. We have the Ashanti Hine, who is relevant today and is actually asking for Britain to return some of the Ashanti cultural artifacts that were stolen by the British. So our history is evident. So I will not take what Hegel says as uh, fully true. And so I have two books on here that you can refer to later on to uh, read. Um, the previous slides where I had Haiti in the middle, I thought it was very important to highlight Haiti. Um, Haiti has played a very crucial role in the global, uh, what we now term as the global capitalist environment or the global world market, because at some point, Haiti was crucial to Europe and the Americas. It was crucial to the British, the French, and the Spaniards. And yet, in Haiti, people of African descent that were there working on sugar plantations, which at that time sugar was a huge commodity for all these imperial European countries. So Haiti was central to revenue that would come into these imperial European countries. And yet Haiti fought back from 1791 to 1806. There was a Haitian revolution led by Toussaint Louverture and others who fought against the British, fought against the Spaniards, fought against the French. And so they claimed their independence between that time because they did defeat all three European powers. I have some key dates here because these dates kind of crystallize how people of African descent moved or were forced, were captured, were kidnapped into what we now know as um, North America. So we can think about the American Revolutionary War, the first Fugitive Slave Act in 1793, obviously the Haitian Revolution, and the second Fugitive Act, Slave Act in 1850, and the War of 1812. I wanted to, before I get onto this slide, I wanted to read a little paragraph from a book. This is called The Long Road Home on Blackness and Belonging by Deborah Thompson. This book details Deborah's uh, discussion around what is home because she traces her great grandparents from both her father and mother's side to the States and also calls Canada home. So she's writing about some of the challenges of calling uh, the USA home and Canada home, and what does that mean for people of African descent. So I'm just going to read a short paragraph here. It says, uh, there is, of course, a long history of Black migration to Canada. The Black presence in Canada began as early as the first decades of the 1600s when Matthew da Costa, a free Black African, is believed to have traveled to Canada with Samuel de Champlain. and served as an interpreter between French and indigenous peoples. A few years later, in 1628, a 9-year-old boy stolen from Madagascar, who was later baptized Olivier Lejeune, was the first black person to be bought and sold in what is now called Canada. We know little else about him. His namelessness and his invisibility, even centuries later, are integral to the logic and the cruelty of slavery, a system predicated on captivity and brutal violence. These forces mobilized with the ultimate goal of denying the personhood and the humanity of the enslaved. And I read that so that people can understand that, you know, the forced migration of black peoples to Canada is part of Canadian history, and we have to recognize that, we have to acknowledge that, and we have to know that, right? So I reference Olivier Lejeune right here, and in Adrian Chad's book. Uh, this is another book, Adrian Chad's book, The Journey from Tollgate to Parkway, African Canadians in Hamilton. She also references um, Olivier Lejeune. Now, even though we have Black families and people of African descent in Canada, uh, from the 1600s to the 1800s, we also notice that there are British loyalists that are also making their way to Upper Canada, which was at the time the name. And I wanted to highlight some of these because they have connections to Black families here in Hamilton. Our first one is the loyalist family, William and Hannah Davis of North Carolina, and they were given a generous grant of 800 acres to compensate them for the loss of their southern plantation during the Revolution. Today, right? Today, part of this land grant is known as Mount Albion and Glendale Golf Course. So I'm sure people now know you know that area. Well, at some point in time, it was William and Hannah Davis's land, and much of the work involved in clearing the land, building the houses, planting and growing the crops, and making sure that everyone was fed and clothed would have been done by enslaved people of African descent. So these are the connections here and the local Hamilton histories that we need to talk about. Third, in 1805, James Durant emigrated to Canada and bought a 100-acre farm, which is today the top of the mountain from King Street to James Street, west of Wellington Street, and east of Wellington Street. It is there that an enslaved woman would take care of his 1-year-old baby. So we would know Durant. We have a neighborhood here in Hamilton called the Durant neighborhood, connections to people of African descent. Sophia Berthin Poley was one of Joseph Brand's female enslaved, um, and was sold to an Englishman named Samuel Hart of Ancaster for $100. The Hart brothers are the founders of Dun 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 Dundas. If you go to Dundas right now, there's a street called Hart Street. So again, these are the unnoticed histories of Black individuals and communities right here in Hamilton. During the 1700s and 1800s, a significant number of loyalists either owned slaves or knew people who did. For example, Robert Hamilton, the father of George Hamilton, from whom the city is named, Maria Lavinia Jarvis, daughter of William Jarvis, um, they also owned slaves. So it begs to question, why don't we know about these histories? Why don't we know about these histories? On July 9th, 1793, Simcoe and his colonial government passed an act to prevent the further introduction of enslaved peoples and to limit the term of contracts of servitude. This legislation did not abolish slavery here in Canada. And one thing I might notice that, there's kind of like a historical analysis of how these loyalists were not using the term enslaved, but using the term servants. And that's something that Adrienne Shad talks about in her book. And it makes me wonder, right? It's like, why use that word when you're still engaging in some of the demeaning behaviors that enslavement does? And we'll get back to Simcoe in a bit. So, after the passage of Emancipation Proclamation decreed by the British Parliament in 1833, and which took effect on August 1st, 1834, the vast majority of Africans arriving to Hamilton came from the United States, either as escaped slaves or were already free. And I put this here because for the last 3 years we're starting to see a rise in celebrating Emancipation Day, which is on August 1st. And also I must include here that, you know, even after the Emancipation Proclamation, which was done in 1833, right, that whole year was so that slave property holders would be able to recoup their money, but nothing was done for African people that were enslaved, right? So again, the dehumanization, the lack of respect for people of African descent. Now let's go back to Simcoe, because I think this is important and is very crucial for Canadian history as it relates to people of African descent. Simcoe, who was very instrumental in passing this law, which is the act to prevent the further introduction of slaves and to limit the term contracts of servitude, was also asked by the British government to go and fight against Haitians, people of African descent that were fighting for their freedom in Haiti. So think about that for a second. Here you have Simcoe in Canada saying, hey, we need to prevent further introduction of enslaved peoples. We need to curb uh, long-term contracts of servitude. Then now travels to Haiti because obviously for Queen and country, right? Travels to Haiti to then fight against. He actually led the British troops against people of African descent that were fighting for freedom, fighting for liberty. So these are some of the things that I think is important for us to understand. And this is why I say in my previous slides that Haiti plays a crucial role globally, whether you are from the continent of Africa, whether you're in North America. Haiti was a very crucial fight because it disrupted the empire's dependence on sugar for their revenue, and the revolution also really pushed that people of African descent in the Americas now could fight for their freedom. And that scared slaveholders, whether they were in the Americas, Jamaica at the time, right, and southern states. So this is very, very, very important. The Haitian Revolution. And I can guarantee you, Haiti, the Haitian revolution is never taught in schools. So I want to now move into um, specific histories of Black and African families that made their way to Hamilton, and the importance of making their way to Hamilton is what I've tried to establish around the Haitian Revolution and around the key legislations of the act to continue enslavement here in Upper Canada at the time, 1793, and the previous Fugitive Slave Act in the United States and the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Those are the things that kind of started pushing or giving people of African descent the 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 uh, the will to leave and fight for freedom, to look for freedom, to refuse enslavement, to refuse servitude. So these are some of their stories. So we can talk about Solomon Conaway, who settled up on the mountain. We can talk about Paola Brown. Paola Brown was very, very, very active here in Hamilton. And he was actually one of the folks that also started um, speaking about racial segregation in education right here in Hamilton. We have Reverend Richard Sorrick as an enslaved African from Maryland who paid $400 for his freedom, and he played a huge role in the AME Church during his years here in 1847. We have Williamson Peace, who worked as a barber at John H. Bland's shop on Upper James. He lived on 2 Houston Street in 1870. We have Anthony and Albert Brown. They I mean, when you read and hear some of these acts of refusal and acts of seeking freedom, uh it is inspirational. You know, these brothers escaped using one of their master's oyster boats. They're like, we've had enough of this, and we're not only going to run away, we're going to take your boat and run away. When they arrived in Hamilton, they worked as waiters at the Anglo American Hotel at 61 King Street East. The hotel is no longer there. The hotel is no longer there. If you get Adrian Shad's book, there's a picture of the hotel at the time. We have Henry Creel, who arrived here in 1840 with $80 and purchased lots at 229 North McNabb and later 231 and 233. He would go on to later support other black families in purchasing lots on up here on the mountain on Concession Street. And at the time, we'll talk about this later on. I have some slides about it. There was a lady that dubbed where all the black families living up on the mountain as Little Africa. I mean, there's some problems with that, but anyways, uh, Little Africa was kind of the area between Upper Wentworth Street, Concession Street, Sherman Avenue, and Fennel Avenue. So again, when we talk about people of African descent, black people, right here in Hamilton, right? Before the city was incorporated in 1846, the presence of black people have been here for a long time. So I mentioned the fugitive slave laws of 1793 and 1850, which kind of precipitated or started the migration up up north. Here is on the left is an ad. Uh, I took this ad from another book. I don't think I have it with me. It's called Freedom Seekers by Daniel G. Hill. Um, that's warning people that you could be caught, and when you are caught, there's no recourse, right? Because during these slave laws, especially the 1850 slave laws, if you were caught, you were not you were not going to a court of law to explain why you were running, or if you were free, or if somebody owned you. That was what was happening. So people were running up north. On the right hand side is again another picture, and I'm just going to make a little commentary because I know that I can't talk about this without making that commentary. The 1850 fugitive slave law meant that, right, slaveholders could hire anyone to go look for any black person, and you would be paid to say you have seen a black person, and that person should not be here. What does that sound like? I think it sounds like ICE, right? Where you have a federal government enacting a law, hiring people to go and catch people based on the color of their skin, right? So the when we are talking about learning these histories, we're not just saying put up Martin Luther King and Viola Desmond and that's it. We're saying no, let's learn from the histories that we are actually seeing today, because the fugitive slave law is literally ICE. And that is why you had the Underground Railroad. That is why you had people in the water, walking in the water, because they had dogs that were sniffing people. That's why you have spiritual songs. Wade in the water, wade in the water. This is what we're talking about. So these fugitive slave laws are really crucial for us to to understand. Speaking about black families right here in Hamilton in the 1800s, we have to speak about Henry and Julia Berry. Julia Berry was born in Canada sometime between 1855 and 1856. Henry Berry was an escaped enslaved person who came on the Underground Railroad to St. Catharines. By 1881, Henry and Julia had married and were living on the mountain in Lot 10, Concession 4, Barton Township, with 10 children. Henry was a laborer, and Julia was a toll gate keeper. And people would ask, what's a toll gate keeper? So at that time, they had toll gates, kind of like when you go to a parking lot and you see that. Thing that keeps people in and keeps people out. So to enter into the city, you'd have to you have to pay to get in. And Julia Berry and others were toll gatekeepers, James Street and up on the mountain at Rackman's Corner. So right up at Upper James and what we would call Rimo today. That's how people would get into the city or into the mountains. So this is a picture of their family. This picture again is in Andrea Schatz's book, and you can, if you go to Hamilton Public Library on Concession Street, you will find a little write up of the Berry family there as well. So we're going to continue with some of the black families and names that you should know as folks that we all live in Hamilton. I wanted to mention some of the institutions, black institutions at the time that played a crucial role. So we had the American Methodist Episcopal, founded in 1790 on Rebecca Street. The church became one of the first significant institutions in black community that facilitated some of the discussions that were happening at the time and supporting all the black families here in Hamilton. And then in the 1830s, St. Paul AME Church, known as Stewart Memorial Church, would be part and parcel of Hamilton's history and continues to be part and part of Hamilton's history. Last Emancipation Day, we heard from the choir at Stewart Memorial Church. So they are still part and parcel of Hamilton history. And then we also had the establishment of Hamilton's Mount Olive Lodge number one, Prince Hall, that was formed December 27th, 1852. And that was another institution here that was started by black men supporting other black men. And that's a long standing institution. So, what are some of the other folks that ran away, fled, uh, uh, and called Hamilton home? We'll see them right now. So we have Jermain Loguen. Jermain was an escaped enslaved person who arrived in Hamilton between 1834 and 1835, graduated from Oneida Institute as a teacher, and founded several schools of African American children. Was known as an underground railroad king. Was one of the station masters in the region, openly flouting the Fugitive Slave Act 1850 by aiding and transmitting 1,500 escaped slaves to Canada, and contributed to various anti-slavery newspapers. And again, that's his picture. You can find more information about him in uh, Adrian Chad's book. Next up, we have Enrose Griffin. Enrose Griffin came to Canada approximately around 1829 from Virginia. Enrose's wife was Priscilla. They settled in Ancaster and began clearing land for cultivation. He grew a variety of crops and raised cows, sheep, horses, pigs. And by 1861, his farm was valued at $2,000. $2,000. His son James took over running the farm when Enrose died in 1878, and the Griffin House, which is still standing today, was designated a National Historic Site in 2008. And as part of this lecture series, our last lecture series, we're going to have Mara Benjamin, who is the current site supervisor for Griffin House at the City of Hamilton, to join us and share some of the updates of Griffin House, what people can expect. They're going to be opening it up soon because it was under renovation to ensure that it's accessible to the public. So Mara is going to join us on February 26th to share some updates. And then here's a picture of the plaque that is at Griffin House. Next up, we have Reverend Richard Sorrick. I mentioned him earlier. He also was came from Maryland, paid $400 for his freedom, and again, Reverend played a huge role in the AME. and did a lot of work with all the churches in the area. And this is a quote, and I got this quote from there's a book written by Benjamin Drew, who went around Canada documenting stories of folks that had ran away from the states and started calling Ontario home, from St. Catharines to Brantford to Hamilton to Windsor, Chatham, all these cities. And he said, slavery is the worst system I've ever seen. Although I have been poor here, I can repeat, give me liberty or give me death. I have seen children at a month old taken from their mother's arms and sold. I have seen children from their parents and many separations of families where the parties could never see each other again. So again, these are the things they were running away from, and making sure that they could engage in self determination right here in Hamilton. So I've kind of I mean I hope you know that these lecture series are not exhaustive of all the histories of people of African descent right here in Hamilton. I'm trying my best to kind of give you some stories here. I also have a list of references for you at the end of the slides that you can continue to read more and learn more. So this is not an exhaustive list. Don't go around saying this is the full list and that's it. No, I wanted to give you some families that is crucial for you to know, and then you have kind of a starting point, and then you can move on from there. So now, what I wanted to do was talk about some of the things that were happening from the 1800s, the 1900s, and just animate it in like some of the continual challenges that we are facing currently. So we talk about education. Education is all is always a site where we're having conversations, and this is a petition. This is a petition that was sent to the Governor General, dated October 4th, 1843. And again, I'll just read it and then give you some context. It says, "May it please Your Excellency, we the people of African descent, inhabitants of the town of Hamilton, District of Gore, and Province of Canada West, as loyal individuals of Your Excellency, on your arrival amongst us as Her Majesty's representative, in behalf of your petitions offspring who are denied of the privileges of being admitted into any of the free schools of this town, your petitions having all paid taxes, having all taxes to pay and assessments, and now being denied privilege of education is as adopted by the government. Your petitioners humbly entreats Your Excellency that your petitioners' children may be admitted into the free schools of this town. The petition was signed by Reverend Armstead Brown, minister of Baptist, one of the Baptist churches in Hamilton. And so this petition was basically saying that uh, black children were not allowed into public schools. That's basically what it was saying. And they were saying, "Hey, wait a second. We call Hamilton home now. We pay our taxes. We contribute. I mean, look at and Rose Griffin was also one of the folks that signed the petition, making 2,000. His farm is valued at $2,000. They're paying their taxes, and they're saying, "Why won't you let our children go into these schools? Why?" Right? So when we talk about uh, segregated schools, most people think United States of America. Well, think Hamilton. In 1850, the Common Schools Act, the legislation governing education in Ontario was amended, a separate schools clause was added. The clause allowed for the establishment of separate schools for Catholics, Protestants, and Black people. The amendment allowed these communities to request a separate school through the school board trustees. However, um, however, common school trustees used the clause to support the practice of racial segregation. They requested separate schools for Black children, even if Black parents objected, right? So racial segregation in Hamilton in schools played out differently in a number of ways. In some places, there were separate school buildings designated as this is the school for people of African descent, and in Hamilton, in Flamborough, students attended the same school, one room, but had classes at separate times, right? So that's it. This is Hamilton. That's what was happening at the time. Uh I have a picture here of Central School, 7500 downtown. Opened in 1853, built for 1,000 students, one of the largest schools in Hamilton. And some of these instances of racial segregation was happening at Central, right? Right downtown in Hamilton. Racial segregation in education was reinforced and maintained by Ontario's provincial court system. I have a link there. Once racially segregated schools were established, the courts upheld the practice. Black children were refused admissions into white school despite Black parents suing common school trustees. In response to the activism of Black parents, racially segregated schools in Ontario were gradually phased out. The last racially segregated school in Ontario, school section number 11 in Colchester, closed in 1965. 1965. This was done after newly elected MPP Leonard Birthworth. He was the one that pushed for the separate schools clause on segregated schools for people of African descent to be officially removed from provincial education policy. And then if you want to go outside of Ontario, the last racially segregated school in Nova Scotia closed in 1983. 1983. 1983, right? So you have current Black families, people of African descent that call Hamilton home, dealing with racial segregation in schools and also dealing with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. So what was happening at the time? Well, Black individuals, Black families, Black women, Black men were organizing. There was the North American Convention of Freedmen. They had this convention at St. Lawrence Hall in Toronto, and apparently they wanted to have the conference here in Hamilton. That tells you a lot about the activity that was happening here in Hamilton. But nonetheless, they had it in Toronto, and you had representatives from Jamaica, from England, and folks from Hamilton who attended the convention included Frances Russell, a 44-year-old laborer active in the church again. We had John Burns, a 46-year-old saloon keeper who owned a four-story brick enterprise that was valued at $1,000 on King Street. And then we had Thomas Morton, a successful cabman who also attended. Other attendees included Henry Bibb, Mary Bibb, Frederick Douglass from the United States, Josiah Henson from Chatham area, and then Thornton Blackburn. For those of you that don't know, he established Toronto's first taxi company. So they were all in attendance, All of them were in attendance, speaking about the messed up Fugitive Slave Act, right? And as I mentioned earlier, the U.S. government hired federal agents and deputized citizens to pursue and capture escaped enslaved people anywhere in United States. The act also made it illegal to provide food, shelter, or money to escaped enslaved people. Those who broke the law were threatened with 6 month jail sentence or a 1,000 fine. It was also illegal to interfere with the pursuit or capture of those who had escaped enslavement. Enslaved people who were suspected of having attempted to escape were not given the opportunity to defend their case to a jury trial as they had prior to 1850. Agents were promised a fee of recovering fugitives in order to ensure their participation in the capture. As a result of this incentive, many agents went through any means necessary in order to capture and sell any black person they could find. This also meant that the members of the free black community, even those that were not born into slavery, were at risk of being kidnapped and sold into slavery with a sense of urgency. The convention was organized under these conditions. And like I said earlier, what does this remind you of? ICE. Anyways, Black Hamilton was a large part of the network of people that were organizing to object this law, American racial discrimination. We had H. Ford Douglass, who went on speaking tours. There was the Anti-Slavery Society of Canada chapter that was established. There was the Black Abolitionist Society that was also established. There was the Provincial Freeman newspaper that was started by Mary Ann Shadd, and Robert Brown of Dundas, John Burns, and Josiah Cochrane were listed as vice presidents of Marianne Shadd's newspaper. Um, and there were others that were really organizing against this act. So this speaks to the action that was happening here in Hamilton. So this is a picture of the Jolly Cut. Um, these are some of the folks that were living up on the mountain and called the mountain their home. I won't go through all the list. You have the list. But I really wanted you to kind of see that when we talk about the histories and stories of Black people in Hamilton, Ontario, it goes through a wide scope of organizing, participating, speaking up against injustice. That is something that has always been present. I spoke about the idea that, or the moniker that was given to Black and African folks that were living up on the mountain, being called as Little Africa, and it was started by Mabel Grace Burkholder, and Burkholder is actually a cemetery up on the mountain and also a neighborhood up on the mountain, and yeah, she wrote some, according to Adrian Shad, Mabel Grace Burkholder really wrote some problematic things about Black communities right here in Hamilton, and it was very troubling. We talked about James Durand having enslaved folks, servants. We talked about William Kirkendall, another neighborhood that we have here in Hamilton, who also owned enslaved people and servants. And William Bridge Green was apparently the first person to sell property to Black families here up on the mountain. Um, I wanted to add this slide because I think it's very important, and this is a book that folks can access. This book is called Canada and the Blackface Atlantic. It's written by the great Cheryl Thompson. Yeah, Cheryl has done lots of work on this topic, and right here in Hamilton, there used to be minstrel shows. and they would tour the city. So you would have minstrel shows. They would go from Toronto, Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, Windsor, and then they would just kind of tour Ontario. And they took an ad on a billboard somewhere, and like in true Hamilton fashion, uh, black citizens were like, "Nah, we ain't having uh, this degradation of people." So by October 1866, a majority of the black community here said they had enough. You had 72 people sign a petition to force the city council to enact a bylaw that would refuse to grant licenses to any shows or exhibitions that represented the black people in any demeaning manner. And at the time, Hamilton's mayor was of the opinion that the local authorities had no power to prevent this kind of advertising so long as it did not overstep the bounds of decency and morality. I want you to think about that for a second. You got like a minstrel show coming to town. They have some messed up depictions of people, and the mayor is like, as long as it doesn't overstep the bounds of decency and morality. I don't know, but this tells you the history of Hamilton. Um, so, anyways, read Cheryl Thompson's book. It's very important because it also details some of the ways in which Black communities in Hamilton and Toronto also addressed these minstrel shows. Uh, I wanted to end with this. Uh, you know, in Benjamin Drew's book, I don't think I have it here. I thought I had it here. I wanted to show it, but I don't have it here. Um, one of the oh, there it is. I have it. So it's Benjamin Drew. This is called the Refugee Narratives of Fugitive Slaves in Canada. So in this book, we have Henry Williamson, and he says, "I'd rather be wholly poor and be free than to have all I could wish and be a slave. I am now in a good situation and doing well, and I'm learning to write, you know? And that's just the hope. That's just the hope, right? That is just the hope of people of African descent. We just want to be free, right? Most deaf. I want my people to be free, to be free. We just want to be free. And here you have Henry saying, I'm okay if I'm in poverty. That's better than being enslaved. That's better than enduring racial discrimination. So I wanted to leave that with you. In the two pictures that we have here on the left side, these are the birds. You won't see it clearly. Hopefully, when Mara comes on the 26th, you might have some other some clearer pictures. But these are the list. These are the list of Enroll Griffin's children. And then on the right here, we have apparently this was one of the artwork that was in Enroll Griffith's house. And you might not see the full thing, but in that picture, it details or it depicts, excuse me, it depicts um, people of African descent and other people living together, conversing together, being in community together. And I think that is an imagination of a world that we want to see, whether it's in 1800s or 2026. So I wanted to end with those two pictures, and I'm going to read a little paragraph from Adrian Shad's book because it's one of the references, one of the main references for creating this public lecture and then the slides. So I'll end off with this, and then I'll look at the chat to answer any questions that people might have. So this is from Adrian Chard's book. She says, whether Canadian born, educated, free-born African Americans, escaped slaves, or former slaves looking for a life free of racial intolerance and bigotry, the black population that arrived in Hamilton came from a variety of circumstances, albeit the same root of racial oppression. Flying in the face of a slaveholder propaganda, however, they were a self sufficient people who contributed the knowledge, the skills they had learned in slavery and in freedom in the northern United States to help build new lives in this city. However, in the world of British North America, they were lumped into one category, and the myth of the fugitive slave fleeing servitude and arriving destitute in need of charity and benevolence became the stereotype by which we are all judged. I think that's the history right there, right? People of African descent come from various places and understandings and experiences and places, and yet, like Hegel, we are erased, we're collapsed into one idea. These stories of Black Hamiltonians this disprove that, and will continue to disprove that, while at the same time creating a city and building societies that ensure that there's no discrimination. There's people that are free, that can do the things that they want to do, that can live and thrive in peace, in harmony, right? So that is the history. That is the unnoticed history of black communities right here in Hamilton. I'm gonna go over in the chat and see if I missed anything. Um, okay. Uh, okay. Yes. So, thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate you tuning in. And as I said, I'm happy that um, you all tuned in, and you have the slides. I have the references here for you. So I talked about Benjamin Drew's book. Natasha Henry also has an important book about Emancipation Day celebrations in Canada, which you should also check out. I talked about Daniel Hill's book, The Freedom Seekers, People of African Descent in Early Canada, and obviously Adrian Schatz's book, which again is focused on Hamilton, which is again a huge reference for this lecture series. And then I talked about Cheryl Thompson's book, and then there's a book by Henry Tulloch, Black Canadians: A Long Road of Fighters. That book tries to give a broader perspective of people of African descent across Canada. And then I had some three documentaries here, um, three documentaries here for folks. The Driston story talks about again people of African descent in Dresden. Very important story to watch. Speakers for the Dead. This is yeah, that documentary is very tough to watch, but I think this is the reason we have to watch these things. And then ninth floor. For those of you that don't know, ninth floor happened in St. George University in Montreal. That is like one of the also crucial moments around the 60s and 70s. about racial discrimination right here in in Canada, and in Montreal, and it's very, 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 very informative, and it also speaks to what I was trying to say at the beginning of this lecture series about how when we think about people of African descent, we tend to localize the histories, but the histories are actually globalized, connected, connecting, connected by localized threads. So think of these histories as global histories that have local threads that connect to them. So you have all the links I've provided here. You can watch these documentaries for free, courtesy of the National Film Board. Thank you very much. Keeping up with that public access of information. So I've provided all of that for you. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach out to me. And I guess I will see you next week Thursday, same time. And for those of you that have signed up, I'll probably send you the slides for next week. Get a little closer. I don't want to flood your emails, but yeah, watch out for those slides and share this with as many people as you want. If there are other folks that you want them to, maybe they couldn't make it today but they can make it on the other days, please share it with them. Oh, I forgot, on February 26th we have Dante Hillen, a young high school student, also going to join us. So if you have young ones that want to hear from other current young leaders in Hamilton, please, they might want to tune in for that. We want to make sure that these lecture series are also age friendly and family friendly. So there you go. I'm just trying to finish off. See in here if I have any other questions. Um, yeah, so February 12th, we're not doing the same presentation. February 12th, we're going to move into the 1900s. Um, yeah, thank you for the information. No, thank you for coming. How does knowing this history change how we should show up as neighbors? Paula, I think we should show up. That's it. We should show up. We should be there for everyone. We should be in solidarity. We should commune together. We should learn about all the different histories that make up Hamilton. Again, there's so many communities that have called Hamilton home. We need to understand what those histories are and show up for folks. I look forward. Yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Oh, we had folks from Flamborough. Cool. I was not aware of the problem. Yeah, you see, this is it. People are not aware. So, this is the whole reason for doing this. It's like, if you don't have this information readily available, like, you won't know. If you haven't read the books, you won't know. And that's why I'm really trying to share this so that people can know. And then, when people say, "Oh, we never had racism in Canada," or "it's not as bad as it is in the South," you can be like, "Hey, wait a second. Let me tell you, right?" Or let me give you some information to so that um you really get to know the history. Okay, just now, thank you for including reference. Yeah, yeah, no worries. What a great source of, yeah, yeah, no worries. Can't wait for Dante. All right. Well, okay, I'll tell Dante that folks are ready to listen to it. Thank you. Looking forward to next week. I'm from Dundas. Yeah, Dundas has a long history. I talked about that, Hat Street, and so anyways, now you know the history about Dundas and Hamilton. Anyways, I don't want to take too much of your evening. We want to make it 1 hour and that's it. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next week, same time. I will try and get you the slides before our session so that you can take a look at it, and if you have questions, we can get to it. Thank you very much. Have a great night and happy Black History Month. We'll see you next week. How do I get the slides? Did you Uh s- now, did you sign? Okay, I'm gonna put. Let me put my. I'll put my email in here. Send me an email, and I'll get you the slides. So this is my. That's my email. Send me an email, and yeah, you didn't sign. That's okay. You have my email now. Send me an email. I'll send you the slides. Okay. All right. See you all later. Bye bye. Good night.